Welcome to Nine and Thrive. Today we have our resident legal counsel, Mrs. Antoinette Martin Esquire. And today we'll be talking about understanding licensing. Um, I know I've got some specific licensing questions for you at the end of this presentation. So this is super timely. I'll let you
Okay.
go.
Okay. All right. So we've been talking about intellectual property a lot. And I think that sometimes what gets lost is the benefit of protecting your IP. And so licensing and franchising are going to be two of the tools that you're going to use in your business to actually gain additional income. This is how your IP is going to work for you. So in some ways, licensing and franchising they're the same thing, but they are also very different, and very different industries use both, right? Okay. All right. So, licensing is usually permitting a company to use your intellectual property in some way. So, the example I'm going to use is Nike is a shoe company, and then Sanrio owns the rights to Hello Kitty. And so, if Nike decides that they want to put Hello Kitty on sneakers that they're selling, Nike is going to enter into a licensing agreement with Sanrio to be able to put Hello Kitty on their sneakers. What that looks like for Nike and Sanrio is Nike is likely going to pay Sanrio some sort of royalty, some sort of fee to be able to put Hello Kitty onto their sneakers, right? And the benefit there is that Hello Kitty is an established brand. Hello Kitty is a very popular character. It's going to benefit Nike in selling sneakers.
That would be
Franchising, yes, it would. And franchising is one, it's a little different, right? So it's going to be me renting out somebody's name, right? And so the greatest example you'll run into is going to be McDonald's. McDonald's is a franchise. Anytime you see somebody opening up a McDonald's that's not a corporate store, they've purchased the right to use McDonald's name. So that way they don't have to worry about building up a brand identity, right? McDonald's has an established brand identity. So both of them have their benefits. Both of them can have their own drawbacks. It just depends on where you're at and what you're trying to accomplish in your business. So the key difference is that franchising is more about the whole system that they have set up, right? This is about McDonald's whole restaurant structure, not just necessarily the name McDonald's, but also about the business structure that McDonald's has set up. Whereas licensing is just, hey, I have a pretty popular trademark that may benefit you in, selling your product and providing your service. You have the right to use this in a limited capacity for this amount of money, right? So franchisees generally pay an initial fee. Sometimes they can be really hefty, like in the case of McDonald's. Sometimes they're much less, like in the case of a Chick-fil-A. But it just depends on their business structure.
I looked into Chick-fil-A. Now their franchise fee is very affordable, but I think
Yes, it is.
but I think you have to stand in line to get selected, virtually. And you
Yes.
also have a lot of back end expenses and you have
Yes.
the cost of your time.
Mm-hmm.
So that
And yeah, Chick-fil-A, they actually, and this is one of the drawbacks to franchising is Chick-fil-A actually eats into a lot of the profit that you're actually going to make off of Chick-fil-A franchises. And so they really become more profitable when we have multiple Chick-fil-A's that we're able to own. So there are some drawbacks. Sometimes it's better to have to pay that higher initial fee because it affords you the ability to generate more income.
okay.
So licensing and franchising, they're really important for global business expansion. They're really important for gaining access to capital much quicker, right? I'm always going to tell you this. If you're going to license, you're going to franchise, you're going to license and franchise with more established businesses. If we're both just getting started, there's really no benefit in me allowing you to use my intellectual property or you paying me to use my intellectual property because we're both sort of at same footing, right? Where's the benefit there? There's more risk that you won't actually be paid for the use of your IP, and you kind of have to be really protective over your IP. And we'll talk about why you have to be protective over your IP later. And licensing and franchising are going to be good ways to help you scale your business, right? It's going to be access to a lot of capital probably fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with licensing, like I said, you're giving somebody permission to use some sort of intellectual property that you own. So I use the Nike and the Sanrio example, right? And so patents are technological advances, right? You created something new, you've invented something new. And so what that looks like for patents is back when satellite dishes were brand new, right? RCA was the only one that was allowed to sell satellite dishes. And so that meant that RCA probably somewhere along the line, their technology department probably owned the patent to these satellite dishes, right? And so if anybody else wanted to offer anything with satellite dishes, they were going to have to go to RCA and license out their invention, right? Now, patents aren't like trademarks. Trademarks last forever. You can, as long as you renew your trademarks, they last forever. Patents have a much shorter lifespan. Same thing with copyrights, right? Copyrights go for the life of the creator plus 100 years. So they have a much shorter lifespan. So eventually you'll see, even with technology, sometimes you don't have to license out. You just kind of have to wait them out, and eventually you'll be able to use it. But it's kind of like Apple with the iPhones, right? Once I've established my brand identity, even if you're able to come on later on and use this technology, I've been using this technology for 30 years before you were ever even able to start using it, right? And so I'm known as the expert in this technology. And so it can be very important. And that's sort of why, even though they don't last forever, you'll still see people licensing patents and copyrights. So license agreements, like I said, they can range from you pay me a royalty for every shoe you sell Nike with Hello Kitty on it, or Nike, you pay me $25,000 a month for the right to have Hello Kitty on your shoes, right? It's a contractual agreement, and as long as what you guys are contracting for isn't illegal, you can put any terms you want to, right? Whatever you guys work out, you're just going to be held to the contract that you set up.
Okay.
Here's
Um,
the other thing I want to point out about licensing, though, before I leave this page. So when you're licensing, it's not just about being compensated. It's also about limiting the use, right? So I want to not only be compensated with money, but also I want to say that you can use Hello Kitty on your sneakers. You can't put Hello Kitty on your backpacks, in your commercials, all of these things, right? Hello Kitty can go on your sneakers, and that's it. And then Hello Kitty can go on your sneakers for 2 years. And after 2 years, this deal is over. So you want to make sure it's limited. You want to make sure that you define exactly how they can use your intellectual property, because you don't want people running wild with your intellectual property through using a licensing agreement.
okay. Now, with franchising, will
Mm-hmm.
they get to basically broadly use the logos and the licensing at their will, or will there be like limitation? Are they allowed to put limitations on it the same way they would a licensing agreement?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, what you'll find is usually with franchises, the limitations are much greater. They maintain a lot more control over the business structure with franchises than you may even find in licensing agreements.
Hmm,
Okay.
interesting. Okay.
Yes. So there are some advantages and some risks on both sides, right? So if I'm licensing out my intellectual property, the benefit is that I'm gonna gain additional income, right? This is a revenue generating tool, but also it still leaves me with some loss of control over my brand and then potential dilution. And one of the things that we always want to try to limit with our IP is dilution. There was some medicine brand, it was aspirin. I believe it was aspirin. And aspirin used to be a registered trademark, but they allowed so many people to call their medicine aspirin that they lost out on the rights to block anybody else from using it. And so now they're
Mhm.
no longer allowed to have it as a registered trademark. And so you want to make sure that your licensing agreements, you want to make sure you get an attorney to draft your licensing agreements, right? These aren't things that you want to sort of Google or have ChatGPT draft. You want to make sure these are sound legal documents that protect you from eventually losing the rights to your brand, affording somebody too much control over your IP. These need to be airtight legal documents. So you needed an attorney who's very familiar with intellectual property to draft these agreements so they sort of know what pitfalls to look for. And then as far as the licensee, so when they are, so let's say I'm a small company, right?
Mhm.
And I'm a small shoe company and I would like to use Nike's Just Do It on my shoes, right? If
Mhm.
Nike enters into a licensing agreement with me for that, that's beneficial to me because now I'm getting to use Nike's established brand identity in connection with my shoes. And I'll use a more realistic example because Nike's never going to allow somebody to use that Just Do It or that check. But the NFL and the college logos, they have licensing agreements with smaller companies that allow them to put the team logos on clothing. And what that does for these smaller brands is I may not be Nike, I may not be Adidas, but I have Detroit Lions on my shirts. I have Miami Dolphins on my shirts, right?
Mhm.
These are established brands. Sports fans are going to come buy their favorite team's t-shirts, right? And if they can get it at a more affordable price, they're definitely going to come buy from me, right? So it means I have a foot up over people who are just getting started with their clothing brands without these sort of licensing agreements, right? But
Mhm.
the challenge is that if you want to use NFL teams on your t-shirts, the licensing fees tend to be pretty high. And so it can cost a lot of money up front to be able to enter into these licensing agreements when you're sort of a smaller company. Now the trade-off is supposed to be that I'm going to pay you a lot of money up front, and on the back end here, I'm going to make a lot of money because I didn't have to spend time building up a brand identity. I used your brand that you had already built up.
Mhm.
Okay. So you'll see this in entertainment and media. You'll see crossovers on shows. You'll see, especially in kids' shows, you see this a lot. Sometimes you'll see crossovers in cartoons. You'll see certain characters show up. These are usually dictated
Crazy
by
Daddy
licensing agreements.
911.
Yes. And these are dictated by licensing agreements, even sometimes when they're on the same network, right? It just, the different trademark holders, sometimes these business structures, like Disney has all these different networks and things that they own, right? But these function a lot of the time like independent companies. So yes, Disney is the parent company, but they function like independent companies. And so if I'm on, Disney, the channel for the kids, and maybe there's a crossover with a show on ABC. Well, these two things usually function as two separate business entities. And so we may still enter into a licensing agreement to sort of compensate for the use. And technology companies, they license software patents, right? Technology companies who come up with software, they're going to license it off to big corporations who need that software. And they're going to make sure that they maintain ownership of the rights. Like I said, patents don't last forever. So eventually people are going to be able to use it without licensing. But what you have to remember about technology is it's evolving every day. So what was popular technology 30 years ago isn't popular technology now. And what's popular technology now may not be important 30 years from now. So technology sort of changes like that. And then, like I gave you the example of fashion brands like Nike using characters like Hello Kitty, Mickey Mouse, all of those sorts of things.
Now
Okay. So franchising,
there
go
was
ahead.
something about Mickey. Did his trademark or was it the copyright? Something
So the
expired.
Yeah. So the copyright, so that's really important, right? So the copyright for Steamboat Willie expired, right? So copyrights last for the life of the owner and plus 100 years. So after that time period, the copyright, you can no longer renew it, you can no longer claim a copyright. The benefit Disney has is they can treat these characters like mascots. And so since they can treat these characters like mascots, we basically would treat them like a logo under trademark law, and we would file for a trademark application for them. And so sometimes copyright and trademark applies, especially in the case of logos. Copyrights and trademarks can apply. And so Disney probably has Steamboat Willie registered as a trademark under some Class 41 for entertainment services. And so people still can't use it, right? But the copyright can expire. And if your copyright expires, you can no longer stop anybody from using it.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm. And so franchising, like I said, in some ways it's the same, and in a lot of ways it's different. Franchising is a contract where I'm going to grant you use of my brand name, right? So McDonald's is a great example because they're probably the most successful franchising model in the country and maybe even the world, right? So
Mhm.
McDonald's is basically, I'm going to give you permission to use the McDonald's name, and McDonald's is known worldwide. And so the benefit is that if you put up a McDonald's on the corner, it's probably going to be successful because McDonald's has built up a substantial brand identity.
Mhm.
The McDonald's has the unique structure that they still maintain ownership of the buildings, but technically, normally in a franchising agreement, they don't maintain ownership of the building. You would own the building and everything. You would just be licensing the name. Now, McDonald's they have a significant cost to get started. I remember a few years ago, it was like you needed $1 million to actually get started with a McDonald's, and I don't even know what it is right now. But it will allow you to grow very quickly, right? And then you also have the support of probably a large corporation because, like I said, the benefit is going into a franchise agreement with somebody who's already established. So they
Mhm.
already have a successful business model in theory. Okay. So franchisers, like I said, they're going to be able to rapidly expand, but they maintain a significantly less amount of control over the franchise, right? So McDonald's franchisees have to offer the menu items that McDonald's tells them they have to offer. They have to have their stores set up to look how McDonald's says they have to look. McDonald's has the right to actually come in and take your store from you if you're not running it according to McDonald's standards, right? Because McDonald's also has the unique position that they want to maintain their brand identity and they don't want a bad franchise or damaging their brand identity. So there's some risks, some challenges, and some advantages for both. If you want to set up a restaurant and you want a lot of autonomy over the menu items, what food you're able to offer, franchising is never the way to go because franchise agreements are probably going to dictate what you can offer. They're trying to maintain the same products across the country, across the world, right? They don't necessarily want people to be in Florida eating one thing and in Georgia eating another. If you sell a Big Mac in Florida, I want a Big Mac in Georgia as well. I want a Big Mac in New York. I want a Big Mac in North Carolina. So you don't have a whole lot of autonomy, a whole lot of right to sort of change their structure. Okay. So we've talked about McDonald's. That's the best example of a franchise. But there are also Marriott, Anytime Fitness.
I
So
didn't
once
know
again,
Marriott was a
yes,
franchise.
yes. So the benefit, like I
I
said,
Well,
now
I
if
knew
I own a
Hilton
Marriott,
was, but
okay.
I knew Hilton was, but that was by
Mm-hmm.
accident because I was
Yes,
trying to do a group booking and I tried to go through Hilton Corporation and they said, "No, we don't own that building." So I was like, "Oh."
yes. So there are a lot of things that are franchised. And like I said, the benefit is, a lot of people know Marriott, right? A lot of people know Anytime Fitness. So if I'm going to open a gym anyway, maybe I should franchise Anytime Fitness because a lot of people know this name. So people will be drawn to it instead of a no name gym that they may not recognize. If people are, looking for a hotel to stay at, are they going to stay at the no name hotel that they've never heard of? Or are they going to stay at the Marriott? So there's some benefit to franchising, definitely, especially if you have the revenue, the capacity to afford significant cost, because some of these bigger companies do require significant cost to get started. So one thing you always have to remember is that IP licensing and franchising they rely heavily on IP laws and contract laws. So like I said, you can contract to do anything, right? As long as it's not illegal, you guys can put it in a contract and you can agree to it. And once you guys put it into a contract and agree to it, contract is king, right? Contract is going to dictate the relationship between you guys. So this is why you really, really need legally sound contracts. You need to know how much revenue McDonald's is going to take from you in exchange for you using their names. You need to know how long people are going to try to use your intellectual property. What scope are they going to try to use your intellectual property? Are you going to use Hello Kitty on your shirts, on your backpacks, on your shoes, on everything, or are you only going to use them on your shoes? You have to take all of that into consideration. You need to each state has their own laws for franchising. You'll find that a lot of franchises are set up in Florida because the laws are set up in favor of those offering the franchise. And then you also want to make sure that you're always in compliance, right? These laws and compliance, they're more heavy on the franchise side than they are the the licensing side, because the licensing is mostly just IP use and contract.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay. So franchising, like I've told you several times, franchising can involve high fees. The bigger the brand, the higher the fee you're probably going to pay to set it up, but also probably the increased earning potential as well. Licensing just depends on who you're licensing with. Most of the time, they're going to take a royalty. But in some cases, for limited use, you may find a fixed fee as well. But most of the time, they're going to take a percentage, royalty percentage. So that way they get paid based off of how much you sell.
Mm-hmm.
I would say one of the larger benefits of franchising is that McDonald's is concerned with their brand identity, right? So they're going to provide you with the support that you're going to need. They're going to help you train your employees. If you need support somewhere, you can always reach out to corporate, right? If you own your own independent restaurant, that may not be available for you, and you may be running into problems and you don't have the support of the larger corporation. Okay. And so you want to make sure you protect your IP, right? So we don't want to be licensing with everybody who comes to us and offers us a sum of money, because we don't want Hello Kitty out there on any and everything, right?
Right.
But we do want to leverage the IP in a way that we're going to be able to generate additional income. That's the benefit of building up a brand identity. So sometimes you have to be selective in how you use it, and you always have to be limited in how you use it. And so that's what I'm saying. Hello Kitty only on the shoes, not on all of your products. Nike only on this line of shoes.
Okay.
Okay. So it can be important to know the difference between the two, right? Because like I said, in some ways they're the same, in a lot of ways they're different. Franchising is just going to grant the owner of the intellectual property more oversight, more right to sort of dictate how you structure your business. Licensing isn't going to do that as much. It's mostly just, I'm paying you for permission to use your IP in some sort of way. And so you always want to take into consideration how much it's going to cost you, right? You need to sort of, do your research, weigh, okay, if it costs me $1 million to open a McDonald's, how much does a McDonald's generally make in a year? Does it make sense for me to spend $1 million opening up a McDonald's? Or should I just take a little less money, take a little less money, set up my own restaurant and start building my own brand identity? Am I okay with McDonald's owning the building? Am I okay with McDonald's having a significant amount of control over how I run my restaurant? But like I told you before, all of these sort of things can help you enter into the market and grow in the market a lot quicker than if you were sort of starting from scratch.
So,
Okay.
licensing,
Mhm.
um, you were talking about fees related to franchising.
Mhm.
What are you seeing as far as fees related to licensing? Is it um, like outrageous to if I want to put Scholastics license have partner with Scholastics for my
Right.
educational program. Um, what is the potential expenses versus millions franchise?
Mhm. So I would say, I've looked into the NFL for some people, right? And the NFL is pretty, one of the more expensive sort of licensing structures. And I believe the last time I checked, the NFL was asking for about 50,000 down. So I'm going to tell you that it really depends on the business, right? A business like NFL is going to ask for a lot more than maybe Scholastic, right? Just by the very nature of their business. Now, so Scholastic has a very, very recognizable brand identity, but just the nature of what we're talking about, they're probably not going to cost as much. Licensing agreements, like I said, they can range from them taking a royalty to a fixed fee. Usually they're going to want something down, some lump sum down, right? 10,000 to start, and then 25% of your sales. 50,000 to start, and then 15% of your sales, right? And that's usually how a licensing agreement is going to be structured.
So I knew a young lady who printed T-shirts, and she did collegiate shirts for HBCUs and
Hmm. Oh, you went out again. I can't hear you. I don't know if it's me.
included. No, it's just me. It's just me. And that included colleges like Chapel Hill, Duke, stuff like.
Hmm.
And she mentioned something about licensing. Um, how does somebody go about starting to try to get licensing partnership with someone, say like a college university? Do they have to go directly? I mean, it's hard to figure out how to go to the college just to get what classes you're going to take, let alone
Right.
how to license with them. So, what do you recommend as a starting point for someone to get a
So,
brand license agreement?
yeah. So, for some of these things, some of these structures, especially the larger colleges, they actually, if you do a quick Google search and you say, I want to license the right to use Duke, right? Then some of these colleges actually have like little websites set up where you can just put in your information, and then, somebody will reach out to you and they'll talk to you about how much it costs.
Really?
Now, some of the smaller ones, you're going to have to, work a little bit, try to get in contact, try to figure out who to get in contact with. But there are a lot of people who license to use college, especially because of the college sports, right? Sports is
Mhm.
one of those things. People license to use sports logos because they sell. Sports fans are serious about their stuff, right?
Mhm.
And they're going to buy t-shirts, jackets,
Like this is
jerseys.
CIAA, NCAA,
Yes.
there's March Madness.
Yes. And
Um,
so look, and that's why it's so lucrative for the kids as they do these NIL deals and things, because there's just a lot of money in sports. And so a lot of the time, it's as simple as type in a Google search. You can find it pretty easily. It's
okay,
not hard.
okay.
And yeah, and it's pretty easy. Now, you want to know what you're agreeing to, right? You want to read those agreements very carefully, so that way you know what you're agreeing to. So that way, you're sometimes we're real excited at the beginning of a business relationship and we're like, "Hey, Duke said I'm going to be able to put their logo on my shirt and I know I'm going to be able to sell Duke," right? Yes. But is Duke talking about taking 50% of the profits, right? We want to know what exactly we're agreeing to. So that way, because if Duke is talking about taking 50% of the profits, and then Duke also wants me to put $25,000 down to even start using their logo, maybe it's not worth it for me to put Duke on my shirts because where's the profit at here, right? I'm still going to have to buy my shirts. I'm still going to have to put Duke's logo on it. Duke isn't going to do that for me. Duke is just giving me permission to do that. So you have to know what you're agreeing to.
Um, Now, I have, as I mentioned, I looked at Chick-fil-A. I've looked at franchises, but what do you recommend as a good source? Because I simply went to like, I mean, some franchises you can go directly to their sites if you know the brand, but if you just have funds, and you're looking to invest, and you're looking, you got a budget, you got, 50,000 or something like that, that you want to invest into a business or a franchise. Is there a portal or a website or something you recommend, um, just to look to see what's on sale? Because they're not always available.
Right. Right. I'm always going to say the best source is going to be the website of the company you're thinking about. But maybe you don't know what
Yeah,
you want to invest
I
in,
don't know
right?
which company.
You don't know who is franchising.
Maybe I just
Mhm.
want to put it into something. Where should I look?
Yeah. So this is going to be one of the places I'm going to tell you AI is actually beneficial, right? Let it do the search for you. Type it into ChatGPT or Claude or any of these things and say who's available to franchise, right? It's going to search, it's going to scour the internet for you. It's going to pull up who's available to franchise. It's going to pull up who offers franchises, right? Now, once you get that information, you're going to go to their website. You're not going to rely on ChatGPT past that, right? You're going to go to their website and you're going to look at their website. And you're going to see, okay, this is what they're saying is a requirement. And then once again, even once you get into, right, the franchising agreement, what they put on that website is going to be bare bones. What they're going to put in that agreement is that's going to be probably like a 30-page agreement with a bunch of little print that you're going to get tired of reading, you're going to get tired of looking at. You want to know what you're agreeing to. But I would say, you know in these cases, this is where ChatGPT is beneficial and it sort of shrinks down the research time, because a lot of the time before we're going to tell you just go to do a Google search, right? Well, Google can be overwhelming. So let ChatGPT run through all of those sorts of sources as it can very quickly and pull a list for you that'll show you who's available and who's out there.
That's wonderful. I'm going to later show you a connection to get more educated on using AI, in which you can plug in the proper AI. There's so many platforms that are out there. It's good to have some guidance in that space, uh,
Mm-hmm.
for research, and just the getting the basic information and foundation
Mm-hmm.
safely and ethically. And so I will be plugging you guys into a free AI program. They do offer a certification course where she takes her time. It's a 6-week course to get certified.
Okay.
And you'll get a discount by referring, by my referral. So you'll save lots of money on it, but it's a very affordable program. And I've been taking it. I'm learning
Okay.
so much. There's so many things that you can use. Um, so yeah, I'll be plugging you guys into that a little later. But
Definitely.
as far as franchising and licensing, um, so you shared about someone who is a consumer um, getting into it, buying into a franchise, getting their own McDonald's or getting into a licensing agreement. What if they want to become a franchise themselves?
So this is why you start with trademark protection, right? The reason why McDonald's is able to franchise their name is because nobody else has the right to use McDonald's. And the reason why nobody has the right to use McDonald's is because McDonald's trademarked their name. So if you don't own the trademark to your name, you don't own your name. Anybody can come and use your name. So this is why you start with trademark protection. So that way, as you build up your brand identity and you get to a point where people are like, wow, Tip Touch Travel is really doing it big, right? I like that. I don't want to have to come try to start my own travel agency. I'd like to, sort of benefit off of the brand identity that she's built. You have it registered as a trademark. You can tell them, yeah, you can't use it unless I give you permission. And I'm only going to give you permission if you're going to pay me $10,000 a month for the use of Tip Touch Travel, right? So this is why you get the trademark for the name at the start of the business.
Yes, I would. So much for
You went out again.
Thank you so much for sharing this educational information. It was super valuable, and I can't wait to hear what's coming up next. There's so much more to intellectual property than I ever knew. So,
Yes,
um, yes, sharing the benefits and the value of it is very much appreciated. So, thank
absolutely.
you so much, and I'm going to end the recording.
Okay.